Now let's talk for a moment about PEEP. Protected Extensible Authentication Protocol. PEEP. Like a bird. Peep, peep. Now this is a little bit of a different method. This is kind of a hybrid. We have the server-side authentication that we just discussed with TLS, but we also have a client-side authentication with EAP. And these authentication types are generic. That's with like Linux and Apple, and it also uses MS Chat, Challenge Handshake Authentication Protocol from Microsoft itself. So there's two different technologies in use here. Clients do not require certificates in this particular setup. So remember, EAP TLS and PEEP are completely different. If you have it set up for EAP TLS on one side, you can't have PEEP set up on your server side. It's not going to work. So this is a type of protocol on authentication. We're choosing the way we're going to authenticate. EAP TLS is one method. PEEP is another method. So let's dive in here. Radius servers are required for server certificate. Okay. And this can be self-issuing certificate, just like we said, or we can purchase a server certificate per server from a public key infrastructure entity. So a certificate authority out there, VeriSign or whoever it is you use. And then we can set up a simple public key infrastructure server to issue server certificates if we want to. Now this allows one-way authentication types to be used. Ooh. We can set these up. We can also set up one-time passwords, and by proxy we can connect to LDAP, Linux, Active Directory, and use Kerberos. We can use Kerberos. Now LDAP and Active Directory both use Kerberos, so we can use some of those technologies. So how does PEEP work? PEEP is a little different, right? We still start with this open authentication. That's why we covered that early on in this module, is so we could understand this open authentication module. Again, we're going to send out the start saying, okay, I need connection. I'm using 802.1x, which is the whole kit and caboodle here. That's all we're talking about in this module, right? 802.1x. So I need to authenticate. So I send this start. Then we get the request identity. Who are you from the access point? Now this is where things get crazy. PEEP allows me to lie about who I am. If I am Joe the supplicant, Joe at nocompany.com, or no company. I'm just going to put no. I'm Joe at no company. I can actually tell the server, hey, I'm nobody at no fun. I'm nobody at no fun. That's who I am. Does not matter. And actually, it makes me a little safer because anyone can read this open authentication, can't they? So they are unable to say, oh, that's Joe at no company. If I lie about who I am, I say I'm nobody at no fun. Doesn't matter what I say at that point. That identity goes to the access point. The access point relays that up to the authentication server. Now, the authentication server, regardless if it has an entry for nobody at no fun or not, sends its server certificate. That's interesting, isn't it? It sends its server certificate right away. Bink. Doesn't matter if the answer was correct or not. So the server side now has the public key of the server, doesn't it? Through that certificate. So now it can encrypt data to send to the authentication server, and nobody else will be able to read. You see how this was a one-sided event? Because I am able to use the public key for encryption now, any communication that takes place in this direction is automatically encrypted and protected. So the server sends its public key over to the client, and then the client had that public key. Now that public key can be used to encrypt any data it wants going to the server. So any data moving towards the authentication server is now encrypted. And I can verify this public key I got from that certificate authority, remember? Ooh, that certificate authority. So now I have a way to send information to the server securely. But the server doesn't have any way to send me any secure information. In our ETLS process, this is when I sent out a client certificate. This is when I sent out my public certificate to the server. But we're not going to do that here in PEEP. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a master key. And that master key is going to be sent out using the encrypted by the public key from the server. So this is going to create an encrypted tunnel for everybody who's viewing this transaction from the outside. If I was sitting there in a coffee shop with Wireshark looking at this information, that's it. This is what I'd see. I would think that was the end of the process. I would see that protected, that encrypted traffic go one way, encrypted traffic going the other way. In most instances, the attacker would think that this is done. The tunnel has been established and all the encrypted traffic is now flowing. But that's not how PEEP works. We set that master key over to the server certificate, to the server. That server now has the master key. So now our communication in both directions is now encrypted. But what are we going to use this encryption for? We're just going to use this encryption for the exchange of identities. I'm now going to do that authenticate. I'm really going to say who I am now. I am Joe at No Company. And then the authentication server is going to look up Joe at No Company and say, okay, Joe at No Company is okay. And then it's going to send out that pairwise master key. Joe at No Company with our password, right? Our authentication tokens, whatever it may be, are going to be sent to the authentication server. The authentication server is going to give the okay to the access point and then send out with that okay signal the pairwise key here. Remember, that is the symmetric key given to the client and the access point. That symmetric key then allows our encrypted data to be sent, protecting our data right here. Locking that up. I'm going to draw lock really poorly. So how does this differ from the EAP process? We generated this master key right here to create this tunnel, didn't we? That's what we did. We generated that key. All we needed was the server certificate in order to send that master key back. We're not using a predefined certificate. That's why it's considered a one-way. We don't need a certificate authority for this, for that master key. So very, very interesting, a little bit different a take than ETLS. This is called PEEP, Protected Extensible Authentication Protocol. A little bit different.